Hello. In the last lesson, we learned about how to use slicing in Python. But in this lesson, we're going to learn about lists and some of the things you can do when using lists in your project. Now, to start with, let's even get to understand what is list actually. Because all this while, we've been using string, right, which is just a collection of letters. How about you want to combine numbers, you want to combine letters, you want to combine floats, and all of those together as a collection? That is pretty much what list allows us to do. Let's take a look at an example. And what we are going to see right now, let's say our list1 variable. I'm going to call the list method. Then let's print it. I'm just going to say print, then I'm going to say list1. Okay, now let's declare something else. Let's say list2. And I'm going to use my assignment operator, which is equals to. Then let's declare angle brackets. Then let's print that as well. List2. Now, one thing we can do here, we can actually check for the length. Let's even see if there are numbers of some things or their contents in the list. So I'm just going to say another print. Then this time around, we're going to use the Len method. Then let's put our list2. Okay, now let's try to run it. I'm just right-clicking to run it. And let's see what we have. Right now, I want to make my run float so that I can always position it wherever I want. So under the setting here, I'm just going to view and make it float. So right now I can move it anywhere and I can actually reduce it. So whenever we want to run, I'll just move it up so that we can see it properly. Now I'm taking it down just to see what we've written. So what we wrote here, we declare our first list, which is list1. Then we had list2, so which is going to give us the toPrint function. So you can see empty list here. And you can also see when we check the length, like how many items do we have, you can see that we have 0. Which is really cool because there's nothing inside actually. But one thing to consider when using any of this two is oftentimes Python really understands the angle bracket more. So using the angle bracket is more like the industry standard. So you're likely to see people declare lists with the angle bracket. So we're going to stick to it and let's look at some example. So it is possible that we add items to our list. Right now, our list is currently empty, right? But we can do something else. So we're just going to go ahead and comment all of those. And let's see how we can place value into our empty list. So let me try to create a grocery list, right? Then let's use our angle bracket. So right now, our grocery list apparently is empty. How can we add more items? Like, how can we include more items into it dynamically? One way to do that is to use the append method. And for us to use the append method, it means that we need to call the variable, then our period. You can see PyCharm is doing a great work with the prediction. So once we have that, what we need to do right now is to place in whatever item that we want to add. Right now, let's say I want to add milk. I can duplicate this as many as I want. I want to add egg. Let's try to duplicate more. I want bread. and I also want rice. Now, pretty much what we're doing is we are adding to the list. How about we just go ahead and do a printout to see if we've successfully added to our empty list. All we need to do right now is to run our print function. So I'm just going to call the print function and also reference the grocery list. And if we run it, if everything works fine, we should be able to see all our grocery lists. You can see we have milk, egg, bread, and rice, which is cool. We can also still dictate what is the length. In fact, I'm just going to duplicate this and let's use the length, of course. The length function will help us achieve that. Once I run it, let's bring our executor here. You can see that we have 4 items. And if you count it with your hands, you will see that quite well, we have 4 items. This is really cool. Remember the way you're able to check the index of a collection of letters? We can also check the collection of a list with the index. Let's take example. For instance, still working with our grocery list, let's assume that we have our grocery list. Okay, with our grocery list, let's also run a print function. So I'm going to say print function. And this time around, let's write some string just to differentiate what we're doing. So we can say index, we can say index 0. Okay. Let's reference our grocery list. We're going to say grocery list. Remember, to reference index, you need your angle bracket, then with an integer in it. Right now, we want the index of 0. Let's duplicate this into 4 places, or let's say, yes, 4 places. I'm just going to say 1, 2, and 3. This is the same thing, 3, 2, and 1. If everything works fine, let's see the result that we get. I'm just going to run it. As you can see, we have the index properly printed. So which means that milk is in the position of 0, then the egg in the position of 1, and so on. Now, what if we mistakenly go out of range? What if our index does not contain what we are requesting for? So let's say right now we are saying out of range, or let's just say out range. Okay? Then let's say we know that 4 or 5 doesn't exist. In fact, let's say 5. What do we get? Is Python going to throw us an error? Let's check it out. If we run it, you can see Python is literally telling us that our index is out of range. So remember we had this encounter while we were working with string. The same thing is also applicable when it comes to indexing a list. Now that you have an idea that it's possible for you to check with an index, we can also use negative index. Let's see how that works. In other words, still with our grocery, in fact, let's just copy all of those and let's bring it here. So the way this works, let's say -1, -2, -3, then -4. We need to change this as well. -1, -2, -3, then we have -4. let's try to run our negative index. In fact, before it, let's do a print function that is going to say in capital letter, these are negative index. Negative. That should be A. Of course, we don't need this one. Let's just put ellipses. If we save it, let's see if we run it, what we get. Oh, something is still out of range. Let's go ahead and comment this one, just so we have a free flow. Now you can see that this are negative index, and you can see them that it started from rice because you're starting with the negative index, followed by bread, egg, and milk. This is really getting interesting. So now let's see what we can do. Remember when we were working with string, I said to you that string is not mutable. In other words, whenever you've assigned a string to a variable, you cannot change the value. Instead, you would have to create another object. But as for lists, they are actually mutable. In other words, you can update the value on a list. Now let's look at what is possible. So, for instance, right now we know that our list contains milk, egg, bread, and rice. What if we decide to change the milk to juice? Let's see how we can do that. Let me borrow this line. I'm going to need new line. Let me use small letter for that. New line. Perfect. So let's try to update one of the lists. And if I want to do that, all I need is to reference the variable. I need to reference, which is, we're going to say, in fact, we can just copy the whole of this. And then, this time around, we just need 0 because it's in the position of 0. And all we need to do is to use the assignment operator and give it the value of juice. Now, let's do a printout. Let's see what we have. Let's print the grocery list. And if we save it, let's run it to see what we have. Now, let's see where we're coming from. You can see that we used to have milk here, but once we get to the mutable, we're able to change the juice. Perfect. Let's take a look at another example. It is also possible to slice your list, just like the way we did slicing with our string. Let's see how we can do slicing just almost immediately. For us to do slicing, there are a couple of rules you need to have in mind, just similar to what we did when working with a string. I just need to reference, let's say, another variable, your list. And in my list, I'm going to reference the grocery lists. Of course, let's use the slice. And to declare slice, of course, what we need to do is we need to also use the column and a number. Let's see what we get from those points. In fact, I'm just going to use a print function to print your list. Now, let's see again if we can do like a demarcation of our print, just to know what we're writing. So at this point, we're just going to say slicing. So when we say slicing, then we should be able to demarcate what we're doing. Let me create more space so that I can zoom up a bit. Let's run our code and see what we get. So now, you can see that we are slicing juice and egg. Let's see the magic that is happening. So you're saying just pick from 0 because you did not declare where it should start from. So you're just assuming that you want it to start from 0. And the reason why it's giving us the 0 to 2, which is our juice and our egg. We can also see another example. We can tell Python to start from 2. So let's say your list 2. All right. Then this time around, we can tell it to start from 2. Let's see what we get. Let's just say your list 2. And if we run it, let's see the result that we get. Perfect. So you can see that right now we are getting from bread all the way to rice, which is really cool. So it is possible for you to also slice in your list. But let's take a look at the final thing on the list. Let's say, for instance, we want to actually check if list will run or throws an error if by any chance is out of range. Let's take a look at an example. So let's say, for instance, we grab the same. In fact, let's see out of range. I'm just going to title this out of range. And when I say out of range, this should be n. Out of range should be n. Yes, perfect. What we need to do right now is I need to maybe do another variable. I'm just going to say my slice. Then this time around, I'm going to reference the grocery list and maybe say start from 2 all the way to 15. We know that our list is 4, like when you count it is 4, it's not up to 15. But normally it's supposed to throw us an error, but let's see what Python is going to do for us. And if I run the print function, let's see my lists. I'm going to say my list. Sorry, it should be my slice. And once I run it, let's try to run it and see what we get. You can see that it started from 2. However, it didn't throw us any error. Even if we go ahead and change this to 15, and let's say we're really going out of range, and we run it, you can see the only thing that Python is doing is actually printing empty lists. The reason is very simple. The first thing that Python does whenever you're slicing a list is that it creates an empty list. Then when it's done creating an empty list, it then goes through all the lists and try to print every value that matches your query. But in the event it doesn't see any value that matches the query, instead of it throwing error, it just returns an empty list. And this makes sense, really. And that's how we wrap it up on this one. If you have any question, please do let us know. If you're yet to follow us on all our social media, please do so right now. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be notified every time we release a new tip. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.